Welcome to E2Talks. It's a podcast in which we chat about the English language landscape, conversing about topics relevant to students like you. In this episode, Jay sits down with David Booth, Director of Test Development at Pearson, to talk about how to maximise your scores on PTE Academic.
Hello, David.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm going to start with probably the hardest question, which is, can you please introduce yourself and what you do at Pearson?
No, I don't think that's a difficult question. My job title is Director Test Development.
Right.
Which, of course, tells you nothing about what I really do. But really, I'm responsible for developing all the test material for PTE Academic.
Okay.
Make sure the questions are all reasonably good, high quality.
Yep.
But also, we have to also deal with the scoring and all the other, technical elements to do with the testing.
Right. So you've got the keys to the kingdom.
The keys are distributed amongst a number of different people, and we've got lots of little systems.
Right.
So all the test items are stored in one particular area.
Yeah.
A place where I never go.
Right.
But other people are there every day. So I don't really have the keys, but I know where the keys are.
Gotcha. Very interesting. Okay. And the last couple of days we've been hanging out at a conference here in Malaysia, and it's been nice to get to know some of the Pearson people, and they're actually really lovely people, even though they're in charge of tests that mean so much to people, right? So,
yeah, and I mean, the people you've met, I've mostly got a teaching background. I was a teacher. I was a teacher in Asia for about 15 years.
Yep.
Bill, a guy we've met this week,
yep.
He's a psychometrician. He's a maths guy, but he was a teacher in Japan and also Italy. So a lot of us have been in the classroom,
yep.
worked with students,
yep.
and I know it sounds a bit strange, but we have the interests of students at heart. We know what motivates students to learn English, and I've always been astounded at the level of English that people get to.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Absolutely. Yeah, especially when they get to the level where they're taking a high stakes test. It's
exactly
the journey they've been on is profound.
Many years in many cases.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through all 20 tasks of the PT, and I'm just going to pick your brains a little bit on what the task is testing for and how best the student should approach the task. So we'll start with the speaking section.
Yeah.
And read aloud.
Yes.
What's it testing for?
Well, read aloud is testing. The thing in PTE Academic, we have a lot of integrated skills questions.
Right.
So a lot of the questions test more than one skill.
Right.
So read aloud, obviously, you have to read, and then you have to speak.
Okay.
So you can see how there are two skills there which are involved from the outset.
Yep.
Also, we have different scales which we use in order to assess those skills. And for speaking, for example, the most important areas are your pronunciation, so how you say the different words or how you say the different sounds in the language,
yep.
and also fluency.
Yep.
How can you speak? Can you speak naturally? So those are the areas where we really focus on that particular question. So if you're a student responding to that, then obviously you have to read as naturally as possible.
Right. Now, naturally, do they have to sound like a native speaker? Do they have to sound like an American or a Brit or an Australian? Should they be mimicking accents? Or?
No, you shouldn't mimic an accent.
Sure.
But you should try and have the same kind of stress and intonation that you would have, that you would do if you were reading something normally. So so try to be natural as far as possible.
Got it. Good one. All right, that sounds good. Repeat sentence.
Yeah.
A lot of people think this is just a test of your memory. Is it a test of your memory, or is it testing something deeper?
Well, memory is involved because on this question you hear the sentence.
Yep.
So clearly you have to keep that sentence in your short-term memory before you can actually repeat it.
Yep.
And that does have a deeper impact because a lot of research shows that unless you actually understand the meaning of the sentence, and that you cannot retain it in your short-term memory very well. And what you will find as well is the longer the sentence is, the harder it is to keep in your short-term memory unless you understand meaning.
Right.
So meaning is critical. And as we know in language, that's the very basic thing in language teaching is about understanding the meaning of something.
Got it. Excellent. So they're not just memorizing something, they're listening for meaning and then repeating it back.
Exactly. And
Excellent.
without understanding, you will find it more difficult. And you can do this in other languages. You can take a sentence in a language that you don't know, for example. So this is meaningless to you.
Yep.
And try and repeat that. And you'll have a go. I mean, you can try and do it.
Right.
But the longer it is and the less you understand it, then the worse you will be at doing that activity.
Got it. Yep. It's an interesting task, that one. Okay, describe image. This one, from my experience doing the test and also from teaching many candidates, it scares the pants off of people. It's the first one where it's really unconstrained, where they have to use their own language. Do you have any tips for describe image? What would you suggest?
My tip for describe image is, first of all, say something about the image.
Right.
So some students and they fall into the trap of kind of reading off the page. So the image will have numbers, for example. There'll be an axis that may be labelled, and they tend to think that the point of the task is just to merely parrot back the content of the image.
Right, to label it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that isn't really what that's about. What they should do is say something about it. So say for example, it's a graph about pollution in a particular city. So it might be something like, oh, this is a graph which is showing how pollution affects the population of X, London, Sydney, New York, and then go and describe some of the detail.
Got it.
So say something about it, and then say what you can see in the actual graph or see in the actual visual that supports what you're saying.
Right, and so one of the stumbling blocks with describe image I've found is that people hesitate and and ah a lot. So should candidates and students be trying to resist umming and ahhing?
Well, no, that umming and ahhing is okay. What happens within the scoring of the fluency, for example, which is where your pausing will have most effect, is that it's looking for what we call filled and unfilled pauses. So where you stop and don't say anything, that has an impact on the person you're speaking to.
Okay.
When you fill that pause with an or an ah, actually, in speech, that actually continues the conversation. And the other person you're talking to is not impacted as much.
Okay,
so filled pauses, when people say and ah, actually help fluency, whereas unfilled pauses, silences, are a negative thing in terms of fluency.
Got it. So long durations of silence should be avoided.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay. Retail lecture. Now, my understanding with this one is you absolutely need to take notes, because those lectures can be pretty sophisticated and abstract, and without some keywords, you're kind of doomed, right?
PTE Academic is, as the name says, is an academic test.
Yeah.
And some of the content is challenging.
Yeah.
So if you're going to listen to a lecture, and these are not full lectures, they're just short excerpts from lectures, and the excerpts are chosen particularly that they've got good content in them.
Yeah.
So there is information in that lecture which you should be able to locate if you're a good listener. And yes, you absolutely need to make notes. So you need to get those salient points, the key points out of that lecture, and note them down on your notepad. And like you say, listening is all real time.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of time. You've really got to pick that information out and note it down, and then again concentrate and focus, because the next bit of information is probably in the next sentence, or is not very far away.
Yeah, good one. Agree. Okay, and then there's answer short question. Now, I understand this one it just contributes points to vocabulary. Is that correct?
No, I think it also contributes to speaking.
To fluency?
I think the speaking score.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think it contributes to the fluency and pronunciation scores, but it contributes to the overall speaking score.
Got it.
And vocabulary. The key thing here really, it's to answer as quickly as you can and clearly as you can. They're quite short questions. They're looking for particular pieces of vocabulary.
Yeah.
You don't have to speak in sentences. It's probably a word or 2 or 3 words maximum that the actual item is looking for.
Easy. Got it. Well, not necessarily
No, they're not necessarily easy.
Challenging.
The response format is easier.
Got it. Yes.
Actually, to do the question is easy, but getting the right answer, obviously different levels of challenge.
That's right. You need a wide vocabulary.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next task is the first in the writing section. It's Summarise written text, where the candidate has to write a single sentence based on up to 300 words of text. What's the best way to approach this, do you think?
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of information in the text, but the key thing, again, is the key thing on this task is to focus on the key information. So any passage of 300 words will have, maybe 3 or 4 main ideas within that text that you've got to pull out. And then obviously what you need to do is then synthesize those 3 or 4 ideas into your own words, but obviously using some of the vocabulary from the actual text itself. So there's a bit of, the challenge is to make sure that you're synthesizing the information together and using what you would call summarizing strategies to link those ideas in a smaller piece of writing. The rubric, the instructions to the task say that your sentence should be between 5 and 75 words. Obviously, 75 words is a long sentence. Some people can write that kind of sentence, but I would have thought most students would be writing in the region of 30 to 40 words, maybe slightly longer, but just to make sure they can get all those key points in that actual sentence.
Good one. Yeah. So to get key points, another way of saying that is you need to ignore some of the details in that text.
Well, exactly. I mean, the key thing with summary is, just pulling out those key points and linking that together.
Good.
So, so it's linking of ideas primarily rather than linking of words. So if you just think, pick out these words and stick them together, that's not necessarily going to be as good as understanding what the ideas are behind them and linking those ideas together.
Excellent. Good one. Okay, the next one is the essay. So writing between 200 and 300 words based on a prompt. I believe it's always an argumentative, persuasive essay, though the prompt can change and can look a little bit different.
Yeah.
As the candidates probably want to know, what's the best way to get a high score for this one?
The best way to get a high score is to organize your essay properly. So even though the essay is relatively short, you should still follow the conventions. So good structure is important. It's important to address again, it's ideas and arguments. It's important to address the opposite argument. Obviously, you may have a view on the topic. You put that view forward, but then accept that there may be caveats or there may be alternative views to that particular topic. Because nothing is one-sided, really. There's always another side to any story. Vocabulary is important because the essay, you're scored on vocabulary. You're scored on grammar. So that means the accuracy of your grammar, so getting the right tenses, using the right words to join sentences together. Complex sentences are important, and also the range of grammar that you use is important. So if you depending on your language ability, you should try to use a wide range of vocabulary, a wide range of grammar within those words. Repeating short sentences will probably end up with a lower score. Having complex sentences with different constructions will probably end up in a higher score.
Gotcha. Yep, that makes sense. Good one. Okay, then we move on to the reading section, and the first task is multiple choice single answer. Now, these can test for different things, right? So the question prompt is critical because it might ask you what's the opinion of the author, or what's this detail? Is that your suggestion, to make sure you read the question prompt?
Yeah, read the question carefully. But you will find, and PTE Academic is not different from other kinds of tests, the main focus will be on comprehension. There will be it may be a purpose of the speaker, it may be something more specific about the text, but most reading tasks are based around reading comprehension. So understanding what the options are. So in multiple choice, you have the options, the A, B, C, or D, or the 4 different things or 5 different things that you can choose from. Looking and understanding those are key to being able to answer the question properly. The one tip I would give on multiple choice is that multiple choice questions, they actually take quite a lot of skill to make, and there are never any trick questions in PTE Academic. We don't have, and there are no questions where there is more than one answer.
Gotcha.
So if it's a single option multiple choice, there will be one correct answer. The other answers will be wrong.
Got it. Yep. Good. So
clearly wrong.
So eliminating answer options is also critical.
And some you can eliminate quite easily. Because you can see clearly from the text they're not true. Other ones might be closer, but they're never correct.
Good. Excellent. Next one is multiple choice. Multiple answers. The text is quite a bit longer. It's
Yes.
up to 300 words.
Yes.
So with this one, is it about comprehension or is it about reading for specific parts of the text?
No, it's the same thing, and often it boils down to, again, basically understanding meaning. There will be a number of meanings expressed within the text, and they'll be expressed in different ways. They shouldn't be related. So again, if you've got 5 or 6 options, understanding those options is critical. And matching them back to the text, finding somewhere in the text where you can say, yes, that links with that.
Yes,
you know?
and then verifying whether it's saying the same thing or being contradictory. Yeah,
exactly. So it's in a way, it's a little bit of matching meaning.
Good one.
Match the meaning of the prompt to the meaning of the passage.
Excellent.
It won't be the same words.
Yeah.
That's
right.
how they write them. They write them so they're different ways of expressing similar ideas.
Great. Good. Excellent. All right. Next one is reorder paragraph. I like this one. I find it quite fun. It's sort of a bit of a game, but it is tricky. Some of my students think that they can just focus on grammar words like the pronouns and think they can realign the sentences just based on he and it but it's more than that, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, that is one strategy,
Right.
absolutely, and teachers will teach that, looking at how pronouns and nouns are used through a passage. But then there's other more complex ways of linking paragraphs together and sentences together, and those will be certainly there, particularly in the more complex tasks. So some of the tasks, because I think there's 3 or 4 of those items in the test itself, they will vary in difficulty. Some of them will be easier to put together than others.
Actually, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
So during the PTE, the question types are not all just hard or not just all medium. There's a variety of sort of easier to harder question types. Is that
Exactly.
right?
If we go back to repeat sentence, for example, there'll be different sentences to repeat at different lengths. So the better students will do better on the questions which are more demanding.
Got it.
So similarly with the reorder paragraphs, some of those reorder paragraphs will actually be relatively simple and some of them will involve much more complex language. And depending on how simple they are or how complex they are, you'll get a higher score. So if you do well on the complex ones, you get a higher score.
I know the answer to this already, but I can imagine some of the students are already, their ears are pricked up and they're thinking, is it possible for me just to get a bunch of easy questions in the PTE?
No. So all the items are selected,
Right.
and every test form is equivalent.
Yeah.
So every test that the student takes is equivalent to the other tests that another student takes. Now that doesn't actually mean it's exactly the same level of difficulty.
Yeah.
But any difference in difficulty will be compensated for in the scoring. But they are very similar in difficulty anyway.
Got it. Good. No problem. Fill in the blanks. Now, I've taken this PT and I've taken other English language tests too, and it occurred to me that PT is it's vocabulary focused in many ways. It likes the student or the candidate to have a wide range of vocabulary, and fill in the blanks specifically is about collocations. Is that right?
Yes.
What's a collocation?
Well, collocations is, in language you find that words often come together. So, one word will often co-occur with another word. And that's particularly true in academic discourse. So there are certain, experimental design, for example. So experimental is often with design. You get other words that will go with design. So people can think of a word and think of all the other words that you often find with that word. Collocation is important because that's how words relate to each other often.
Yeah. Good. And as I understand it, the more collocations you know and are able to use, that sort of correlates or corresponds to you being a better user of English. Because it makes you sound natural, right? Or native-like. Is that correct?
Yeah, possibly, yes. I mean, if you can use collocations appropriately, then you would sound more natural.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's true of all vocabulary.
Yeah.
I think the knowledge of vocabulary in itself tends to show higher proficiency. And some collocations are actually colloquialisms, things like phrasal verbs.
Yep.
So even simple things that you might think, are actually simple language, like for example, turn off the light, because that is actually, a fixed phrase and the words don't necessarily mean the same as the words out of that context, it's actually quite difficult for students. So collocations are quite difficult for students to learn and also to kind of repeat.
Excellent. Next one is reading and writing fill in the blanks. This one, is it testing word choice, like appropriateness?
Yeah, it's not dissimilar to the other fill in the blanks, but there's a slightly different focus for the item. So again, it's looking at vocabulary. As you say, vocabulary is really important in academic context and for academic students. But also, it's looking at appropriate words. So there's a little bit of grammar, word form. So there is some grammatical knowledge which also needs to be applied. And also, people really need to engage with meaning is critical in all these things. So they really have to engage with the meaning of the piece of writing, and if they understand the meaning of the passage, then they'll be able to actually perform better on that particular task.
Great. Yeah.
It's not just look at the words around the gap,
right,
and have a guess. Understanding the whole thing would help you a lot.
Good. I agree. Yeah. All right, and then they move to, they can go to the bathroom and do whatever they need to do for 10 minutes.
Yes, and having a break is a good idea.
It's a good idea. I did it because you get fatigued. This is up to about, 2 hours now?
Well, any testing can be tiring.
Yeah.
And the test in parts is speeded, so you have to react quickly to certain questions. So, you've been there for a significant period of time under some stress.
Yeah.
So having a little break is going to help and clear the mind a bit.
Agree. And then the listening section starts.
Yes.
And the first one is timed separately to the rest of them. It's summarised spoken text.
Yeah.
It's a bit like retail lecture, isn't it? You sort of hear the lecture. In retail lecture, you have to immediately retell it, speak it. And here, what do you do?
Yeah, you have to write a summary. So really, as you say, it's very, very similar to retail lecture. What we're doing here is just using a different channel. So for the retail lecture, the channel is speaking.
Yeah.
So you have to summarise in a spoken way. And for this particular task, you're doing it through the written channel. So you're showing that you can use, your different skills of language. I mean, both of them involve understanding that lecture or that piece of discourse, but you're then using a different skill. In one case, writing, in the other case, speaking, in order to show your understanding of what was in that task.
Good one. And in the instructions in this one, it says something like write a summary for a friend. So you can sort of imagine that you're in a lecture hall and your friend comes in late to the lecture and says, what just happened? And you can sort of hand over a piece of paper and say, here's a quick summary.
It's trying to reflect what might be a realistic situation. So testing is, PTE Academic, it tries to use as much authentic material as it can.
And the lectures are real, aren't they?
Yes, the lectures are real. And in fact, some of the repeat sentences are recorded, but all the other freer type listening activities are based on real lectures or real pieces of academic discourse. And also we try to make the task realistic. And in this case, this is a relatively realistic task that you might have to do in real life.
Got it. Good one. Multiple choice. Okay. I find this one tough, and I think it's multiple choice, multiple answers for listening. I find this tough because I seem to be unable to read and listen at the same time. So as that lecture's playing and I'm trying to read the answer options, one cancels out the other. I can listen, but I can't read, or I can read, but I can't listen. So you think note-taking is a good idea here?
I think note-taking is a good idea. Use that initial bit of time as well to try and look at those options, but there's only a limited amount of time that you've got that. So note-taking, I think, has to be the way that you can note down the main ideas, and again, try to relate those back to the meaning of those particular options. But it is challenging, and the reason we use integrated skills items in the test is that because that's the challenge that people face in normal life.
Right.
In normal life, if you're at a lecture, you may well be reading notes and listening at the same time and trying to work out what that meaning is. You may have a book in front of you covering a similar topic.
Yeah.
So, it's challenging, but it's a realistic challenge.
Good. Yep, I agree. I think it's realistic. Next one's fill in the blanks. It's pretty straightforward. I don't think this worries candidates too much. I think it's a sort of task that they've seen and done before, but do you have any suggestions for them for this one?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, again, it's listening, so it's real time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge. Listening to a passage in real time, understanding it, and then being able to recognize that missing word. And as soon as you recognize the missing word, the text has moved on.
Yeah.
That's the nature of listening. So you've got to kind of put something into that box. Put something which is either the word that you heard or as close to that word as you can think. Then because the text is going to move on. If you spend a lot of time focused on the first box, you might end up missing the next one, and then you lose the track of the meaning.
Yeah.
So it makes everything subsequently more difficult. So what you need to do is really keep along with the text as far as possible. Put put a word in there or letters in there, something that will help you once the recording is finished to go back and check what words you got in those actual spaces.
Great.
So I think it's the real-time nature of listening that is the challenge for students. I think
Listening is
a
it's tough. It's really tough, isn't it? Yeah, and especially because these lectures are real, they don't pull no punches. Yes.
It's authentic material. So again, you're not getting a scripted version of it. So there's the normal variation that people have in their speech.
Yep. Next one is highlight correct summary, and this is another one where you can listen and try to read at the same time, but then again the reading cancels out the listening, etc. So
note-taking again. And note-taking again is an absolutely essential skill.
Yeah.
In an academic context. So and the only way really to do this particular question effectively is to make notes, to isolate those key points, and then match the key points from your notes to the actual summary.
Yeah, and I find that note-taking actually reinforces what I'm listening to as well. It doesn't detract from my listening, it helps it.
Yes,
yeah.
I think so. Because what you're pulling out is the key concepts.
Yeah.
Because we, all the time when we're listening, we can listen to, minutes and minutes and minutes of language. But then once we've switched off from that, if it's a radio program or something, what's in your brain is actually the key things that you heard from that. Not all the other words.
Yeah.
You're taking the key concepts. You listen to the radio in the morning, you're taking the key concepts of the news or whatever, those key ideas. And I think for this kind of activity and for the lot of the listening activities, they want you to be able to listen to extended speech.
Right.
Obviously extended speech in an academic context, but you can practice this elsewhere. Listening to videos, listening to the radio, listening to television, where you're getting extended pieces of speech and getting used to how that is naturally presented through different forms of media.
Great. Then we have multiple choice single answer.
Yeah.
It's pretty. Again, I think the question prompt is critical. I think they get 7 seconds before the audio starts.
And it's focusing again on meaning. What do these prompts mean, and what are the differences in meaning?
Yeah.
Because again, there'll only be one correct answer.
Yeah.
So within the text that you hear, you will find a match between the meaning of one of those prompts and the meaning that's being expressed in that text.
Yeah. I find a good method for this one is to read that question prompt, and it might say something like, what does the speaker think about, I don't know, Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
And so I just keep that in my mind, and then I'm just thinking to myself, okay, what does he think about Coca-Cola? What does he think about Coca-Cola? And I listen to the lecture. I might take a few notes, but then at some point during that little lecture, it'll say his opinion about Coca-Cola, and there's your answer.
Yeah.
It seems to be a nice method. Question prompt to audio.
Yeah. And that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Cool. That one's pretty straightforward. Okay, the next one, I like this one. I think it's a fascinating task. It's select missing word, where there's a bit of an audio, a bit of a lecture, and the last word or phrase has been replaced by a beeping sound. Why did Pearson put this in there? What's it doing? What's it testing for?
Yeah, and what's interesting from my point of view is when you look at those kind of bits of text, how important those last few words are, and how often they are based on the meaning of the rest of the passage, or they summarize it, or they finish off an idea or concept that's within the passage.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting from a discourse point of view to see that that every bit of a lot of what's in that particular passage is relevant to the overall, explanation of an idea. So, yeah, people have to understand. I mean, again, a lot of this is based around meaning. They really have to understand what the meaning of the passage up to that point in order to predict effectively what the most likely thing is that person will say.
Yeah.
And again, the options are useful to look at, because obviously those options will encode different meanings.
Yeah.
So you've got to look at those and actually understand what the meaning of the options are in order to select the right one. So it's quite a, it's focus on meaning, focus again, as I said, on extended speech. And the more familiar you are with those passages of extended speech, the better you will score on that.
Yeah, it seems to me that the better you are at listening, the more you can sort of anticipate what somebody's going to say. So it's when you get to that level, when you can really think, okay, I pretty much know what this person's next few words will be because I've been following along so well.
But we do it all the time in conversation and in interaction.
Finish each other's sentences.
Well, finish each other's sentences, but also anticipate what people say.
Yeah.
So what you can do, for example, if when you look at discourse, is you can be in a conversation and some people can manage to say something which is totally unexpected.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And when they say that, what follows generally is silence.
Yeah, that's right.
Because what's happening is the person you're talking to is recalculating what they think is happening based on what you said.
Yeah.
So all the time in when you're in conversation and when you're talking to people and when you're listening to extended speech, you're actually predicting what is going to come next. So you get a news article about the political situation in America, for example, you'll be predicting what you're going to hear. You'll be predicting they're going to talk about the president. You'll be predicting they're going to talk about Congress. You'll be predicting they're going to talk about the elections coming up.
Yeah.
So all of that. In listening, a lot of listening is actually predicting, because what you're doing is not actually listening and hearing. What you're doing is predicting what you hear, confirming that what you thought you were going to hear, you did hear, and that's how you then understand.
That's fascinating. That's interesting. You're a step ahead. Yeah. Okay, then we've got highlight incorrect words. And I've always sort of thought this task was a bit weird, but then someone at the conference yesterday said that there's a big difference between what written text looks like and how spoken text sounds like. Is that what it's a test of?
To be honest with you, I was interested in that as well, because I was doing the session. And it wasn't me who said that. And also, I think the point that they were making as well is that for learners of English, this is a bigger distinction than us, people who learn languages, as a first language would make.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting as well from the point of view of people who have different scripts. Because some scripts are not realised in sound, they are realised in sound, but they don't have that sound word relationship. And English, many people say, the English is strange in the way that you look at a word and it doesn't look as if it might sound.
Yeah.
There's an interesting area there. Again, I think, to be honest with you, that a lot of this question still relates back to meaning.
Yeah.
And understanding the meaning of the passage as a whole will help you anticipate, to find, and it's content words as well.
Words, yes.
They're not taking out the words which are not relevant to actually what the message of the whole passage is.
So, sorry, can you explain what a content word is?
Well, it's one that it's relevant to the topic, carries meaning, carries significant
nouns,
meaning.
Verbs, adjectives.
Yes,
these ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
they put a picture in your mind, don't they? These ones.
Well, exactly, and also often key to understanding. It's not the words around the kind of grammar and the kind of structure. It's the vocabulary which is key to understanding what the concepts are.
Good one. The last task is an interesting one because it contributes points to writing and listening right from dictation. It's very similar to repeat sentence. Yeah. Some people say that a good way to approach this one is to take notes or write something down as you listen. Me personally, I just don't think there's enough time. I think, again, like repeat sentence, it's about understanding that meaning, holding it in your mind, and then writing it down. Is that what you would suggest?
There's short-term memory involved.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's a similar thing that, the more proficient you are, the easier it is for you to actually hold that and longer sentences in your short-term memory and then put it down. I think, some people may find that writing something down helps, but I would have thought getting the meaning of the whole sentence is probably going to help more.
Yeah, because you can just quickly type it out and get the spelling wrong, get the verb tense wrong, it doesn't matter, then go back and fix it up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But a lot of these items that you may think they're mechanical, that it's just a case of knowing what the words are and they know the order of the words. But actually, they're not really mechanical because they require memory. They're based around meaning.
Right.
So again, and as you say, very similar to the repeat sentence item. Unless you've got the meaning, you won't really be very successful at these kind of items.
Great.
So it's meaning focused. It's not a mechanical regurgitation of text.
Yeah, not memorization.
Exactly.
Agree.
Exactly.
Good one. And in this section as well, in the entire listening section, they have to manage their own time. It's an interesting thing because once that lecture's finished in your, say, multiple choice single answer, there's really no point hanging around on those answer options and ruminating and thinking, which one will I choose? Because you may as well just select and move on.
Well, also, we have done research in the past about when you listen once or listen twice, for example, and what we find is that the more time you spend thinking about the answer, the more likely you are to change it.
Right.
And the more likely you are to change it from a correct answer, which is what you first thought, to a wrong answer.
Right.
So what we've done, did some research. A guy that I worked with for a long time, Glyn Jones, was doing his PhD at Lancaster, did this research. And you find that listening twice actually can impact negatively on your scores.
That's interesting.
Because you doubt yourself, you go back and you start changing things.
Very interesting. So candidates should sort of go with the intuition of their first answer option, go, I think it was B, and then stick with B.
Generally speaking.
Right.
Generally speaking, they will be right. Now, of course, if you do listen twice, and we don't do listening twice in PTE Academic, but if you're in a situation where you are listening twice, then of course you can try and use that for confirmation. But the evidence that I've seen is it tends to add confusion rather than actually make things clearer.
Very interesting. Cool. Well, that's the end of all 20 tasks. Thanks very much for all of your tips and suggestions. Do you have any last suggestions or tips you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think the key thing with any test that you're going to take, these tests are very important for people's lives, like you mentioned right at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's to further your career or to get to a different place where you want to live, to make more of your life, and I think that if you're going to spend a significant amount of money, a significant amount of time doing that, then preparation is a real key.
Yeah.
Understanding what you're going to face in the testing room, understanding, because what everybody wants, the exam, people who design the exam, teachers who prepare students for the exam, they all want the student to do the best that they possibly can.
Yeah.
Something that really reflects their language ability. So if you've got a good language ability, we want you to get a high score.
Yeah, you deserve it.
Yeah. So all the items and the tasks are designed around that. They're not designed to cheat you, or they're not designed to make it more difficult. They're designed so that good students get good scores.
Yep.
And preparation is a key. If you walk into that test room understanding the different items, just like we've gone through today, knowing what you have to do on those different items, knowing how to get the best out of your own ability, then you'll do better.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you very much for the interview.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to E2Talks. Next month, Jay talks to Barry Brown and Reza Tasviri from IDP about IELTS Writing Task 2. Remember to subscribe and check out e2language.com for all your test prep needs. Thanks.